Hello, everyone. It's still early in the week here. It's November 1st. We're going to talk about week 9 of the NFL season. And I was thinking about what to do here because I've been doing the NFL algorithm for, God, at least 7 years, at least or more. And every year this comes up, and I start to get concerned that they're rigging games and that officials are trying to make things happen and stuff that doesn't make sense or stuff that actually does make sense if you pay attention, like teams like Detroit and Jacksonville finding ways to lose games when they shouldn't, all kinds of things. And I thought, I don't want to be super jaded and I don't want to spend all this time working on this and then just complain that the games are rigged. So what I decided to do is do kind of what I was talking about, which is incorporate some non-numerical factors into this programming. And that means that we're going to start looking at officiating, and we're going to start looking at teams that find ways to throw games, and we're going to call it out for what it is, which is BS. Meaning, if we see things happening like guys, going offside and intentionally tackling the quarterback when the play isn't even happening to give them a 15-yard penalty and to keep Houston alive to beat Jacksonville a few weeks ago, we're going to call that out. We're going to name that guy. We're going to talk about the fact that people can either choose to be on the level and compete on an equal playing field and try to win a game, or people are going to try to throw games for whatever reason. So we're going to start identifying that, and we're going to talk about it, and hopefully exposing that will put some pressure on the NFL to clean up their act. Because rather than stopping following NFL, which is an enjoyable sport to watch, I think we just have to expose it. And hopefully it will become, the disincentive to cheat will become so great because people will lose their jobs, people will get sued. I mean, we had this issue in NBA decades ago with the official that was trying to shave points off games to meet point spreads. The guy got arrested. The guy did some time. This kind of thing, like the betting market is so broad and there's money every minute of the game going on, many different outcomes. There's no reason to fix it anymore. The cycle of money is so great and spread across public companies now that it should be a federal crime to fix a game, and people should do decades in prison for doing it because it's going to discredit the entire system. So I suggest we just call it out. And that means I did some programming for this week, and I'm going to talk about how you can do more programming in this file as well if you get a copy, because I think I probably will show the projections, the tentative projections for the week by the end of this video, but I want to show you how we get there and some things that we can do. First of all, in the season pivot sheet, which is where we are right now, there are some variables here for all these different stats that we can toggle. And one of the things that I usually do every season, even though I have not done it at all this season, but we are at least in week 9 coming up now. So we have basically almost half the season already in here already, is we can see what distribution of percentages led to what retroactive record, meaning 5% on margin of victory, 25% on home and away win percentage, 25% on points per game, 15% on offensive rating, and 30% on defensive rating led to you winning 3/4 of your games in the first 8 weeks, 75%. Now, what's fun about this is that's not optimal. We can go back and try to find a better percentage. And so let's start doing that. What if we take only margin of victory as a factor that we care about? We only win 65% of our games if we use that. So that's not necessarily the best factor to use. And I know that. That's why I only had it at 5% earlier. What about home and away win percentage? That one's phenomenal. And that's why I put it in there. Almost 78% accuracy with only using home and away win percentage as the guy. That means it looks at the team when it's home and what its win percentage is versus another team that is away and what their away win percentage is, only away games. That's what this factor is. It's quite interesting. It really identifies that there is certainly a home advantage in football, as makes sense with fans screaming when a quarterback is trying to hike it on the visiting team and stuff. It's a lot of reasons. So that's interesting that is a really strong factor, especially getting into later in the season. How about points per game? Only 60%. That's even less than margin of victory, right? So not a great predictor. What about offensive rating? Also 60%. So these two stats, which kind of, you think they would be a little bit redundant, that is actually kind of the truth. So notice that. What about defensive rating? 62%, a little better. And also this defensive rating is a difficult stat to straight up predict winners because two good defenses going up against each other, it doesn't tell you what the other side of the equation is. So from seeing that, it's making me think that margin of victory can have about 7%. Home and away should be huge because it's a great factor. These can be down around 10, and that leaves 38% for 38% for defensive rating. And here you get 78% win percentage overall. That's pretty darn good. So let's go with that for week 9. And in order to bring this into the cube, we just click week 9. We're going to grab all this information right here. We're going to copy it. We're going to go into the cube. We paste it as values right here. And voila, we have projections. I haven't cleaned up all the players yet. There might be some errors. This Jacob Eason play. While these people are retired, if anybody like Christian McCaffrey is on San Francisco, that's correct. I might need to update his stats to change things a little bit. So it's not super perfect yet. That's why I said it's only tentative. But I do have injuries in here. I do everything. So let's check it out. What does this look like? Week 9. Here we go. Now, a couple things I want to talk about, which is, so we've got all the days on week 9 here. There's a shorter week because a lot of teams have buys this weekend. We won't worry about over-unders yet because they haven't happened yet. So this is what the look is. There's a couple ways I want to look at this, and we're going to open up the filters because we need to. So in general, I always say that we care about projected margin of victory, that's the best. Well, last week that did not happen that way. Our point projections were off and the win score was a better percentage. Okay. So like, for example, let's talk about that. Like it's got the Jets beating Buffalo. You're like, what? Buffalo is really good. Well, you can see that the win score percentage for the Jets is negative 61%. And as these two things are disagreeing with each other, and we're later in the season now, it is certainly making me consider the effect of the point projections right here and what is happening. I suspect what is happening, and what I saw happening last week was something like in week 8, we had Chicago beating Dallas. Okay. Like right here, Chicago beating Dallas. Why is that? Well, I think Ezekiel Elliott was out on Dallas and they replaced him with Tony Pollard, who rushed incredibly well. And we didn't have great stats for Tony Pollard because he hadn't played that much yet. So I suspect what's happening is as key players are getting injured later in the season, we're having this problem of point projections not properly emulating what the win score percentage is doing. That's a justified reason why the algorithm hasn't done that great by point projections. So if that's going to be the case, what we should look at is where do we see confirmation by both point projections and win score percentage? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that by sorting this, descending by win score. So this is the old way I used to do the algorithm years ago before the point projection formulas were in here. It was this, and it was saying, yeah, Philly's going to crush Houston, of course, right? Even though the score is only 21-16, that looks funky, right? Are there people hurt? Like, what is happening there? Don't know. But I'll assume because we haven't had a clean, awesome week with point projections so far this season, that the point projections are just a little bit choppy sometimes due to who's injured and who's playing, and a lack of stats for players that would have been playing, but somebody else is going to play in their place because they're a key player injured. I suspect that's what's happening. But let's talk about how this is going to work here. So you got the Packers are supposed to beat the Lions, but it says the Lions win by point projections. So there's just tons of conflicts. I'm staring at this and I'm like, do you take the Bills or do you take the Jets? The Bills, this line is matching itself with, is making a lot of sense and matching itself with, let's shrink my face up here. Like this is making a lot of sense with this number, meaning if you have a really high win score percentage, the line should be really bad. And the odds makers are seeing that. And so what do? I mean, are there any issues like this is what we're talking about, like filtering both is you can filter, no, it's complicated. But the only games where there's a positive here and a positive here are Philly, Cincinnati, Patriots, Jacksonville over the Raiders. No, I'm not doing that. We're not doing this. We now Raiders are also a weird team, but we're not taking Jacksonville because we know that even if they try to win, there might be forces that are making them lose. That's right, Roger Goodell. That's what I said. I said there are forces that will make them lose. And I think you know what I'm talking about. And the same thing goes for Detroit. Now, Green Bay, owned by the city of Green Bay, uh, Detroit, owned by failing General Motors. There's nobody wants Detroit to beat the Packers. So even though the points say they will, the win strength says they won't, and the non-numerical factors definitely say they won't. So what do you think happens in this game? Detroit scores more points than they should, like the algorithm says, but the refs and Rodgers and everybody find a way to get Green Bay to win this game. So you get a high scoring game where Green Bay wins, 30 something to 30 something, right? Let's actually talk about how they're going to rig the games. You hear me, NFL? We're going to talk about what you're doing. We're going to follow it so that we can actually make a decision. Because I don't understand what happened on Monday night with the Bengals and the Browns. Wasn't there like no score deep in the second quarter of that game? Like how? How is that? Why? Was something supposed to happen and you couldn't have it? Did anybody watch the game? I'd like to know like what happened. Because I didn't watch it because I'm disgusted with it, so I didn't even watch it. But I just want to know. Now, what else can we talk about here? Tampa Bay, I wouldn't touch this. Why is Tampa Bay favored? Why? Because they're supposedly a better team. Seattle and Arizona seriously favors Arizona by points, but but not by win strength. Arizona, another one of those teams that is not having it this year. Chiefs over the Titans, but they're minus 550. But the win strength is not that great. How about that? See, this is where you get a little more accuracy with Tennessee, is on the win strength number. Atlanta, slightly favored over the Chargers? Really? Because of home and away factor. But the points don't agree. You can see how this becomes much more complicated to look at. However, I predict that we will have better results descending by win score percentage and just dodging the landmines of teams that are screwing with us. Like what about Ravens and Saints? Here, I think that let's look at last week for a second. So we're in that sort mode for last week. You can see that the top 6 teams win, and then Cincinnati loses on Monday night to Cleveland badly. I don't know. Tell me what happened in that game. Minnesota wins. The Giants lose on the road. Understandable. Seattle can win. I believe that. This game is an absolute joke. Absolute joke. Detroit was way ahead. Detroit put up no points at the end. Tell me what happened in this game. Were there weird calls? Did they call back, did they call back completions? Did they do something to prevent any scoring late in this game to have Detroit win? Let me know if you watched this game. I didn't, but I suspect BS. Really do. And then the Commanders beat. I like Heineke. Hey, that was a great pass to McLaurin. And McLaurin was trying to win. That's the thing is Washington was trying to win, regardless if anybody was trying to make them not win. They were trying to win, and they managed to win. Then you have the Raiders slightly favored over the Saints there, and it's just like Raiders just get blanked, right? Makes you wonder the question about, okay, hey, we're going to give this game to the Saints, and we're going to make everybody who makes a bet saying the Raiders are going to score no touchdowns in the game wins a ton of money. And then you know what we're going to do next week is we're going to give the game to the Raiders when they play Jacksonville, because Jacksonville is actually a slight dog. But I figured Jacksonville might be favored, but not anymore. Now it's a toss-up game. So they're going to figure out a way to give this probably to the Raiders. They might give it to Jacksonville because they're back at home and because I am telling them that Jacksonville loses games on purpose. So they will respond to my comments. Don't think they don't pay attention to these videos. Okay. I know where I send this file and I know who's hearing this. So Yeah, just go ahead. Just keep rigging games because we're going to identify it, and it's eventually going to get me stop doing NFL next year. Like there will be no NFL algorithm if this stuff keeps going. Let us all not forget that there was a game, a playoff game, a few weeks years ago between the Saints and somebody. I can't remember who it was. It was Saints and Patriots, or Saints and somebody. And there was a non-pass interference call that would have given the game to the Saints, right? Late in the game, so a few years ago. It was so egregious and so obviously rigged that the sports books refunded people's money, right? Let's start demanding that the sports books refund our money when we suspect the game is rigged. That is probably a way for us to get them to stop. Once we start attacking their pocketbooks here, then why can't you file a lawsuit if an official is fixing a game and it's obvious, right? Seems like a perfectly valid lawsuit. I had money on the game. It is an open marketplace, and somebody is doing something against the rules for some reason. That's the only way to put a stop to this. And rather than me yelling at the computer all night long, let's just understand that that's the only way to fix this, is to call it out and to fire and retire people who are participating in this activity. So let's just pay attention. That's all we can do. All right. Good luck, everybody. May all your picks be winning, and may all your games be on the level, which I think is the most important.